This week on Medic Life, episode 22, why choose EMS as a career path? This is Medic Life, a weekly video podcast for EMS professionals, bringing you real-world knowledge about today's EMS with your host, John Newton. Lifers, it's time for your weekly dose of Medic Life, where we delve into every topics in EMS. I'm your host, John Newton. We're here with my co-host, Marty D, coming to you live from Houston, Texas there. This week, we're talking about EMS as a career path. Why do we choose the field? Hey, if this is your first time watching and listening, thanks for coming. All the links, you can find them down there in the bottom in the description, and that nice little red button, you can hit subscribe. And you can also go to mediclifetv.com and get the latest episodes. Guys, the face made for radio, right? James B. Boomer.
Yep.
I'm just picking at you, guy. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, how you doing, Marty?
I'm doing awesome.
Cool. You guys ready for another fun show?
Yep.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'm just picking at you. You put that on Twitter the other day, the face made for radio, and I'm like, yeah, okay. He knows better. He knows better. So I've been seeing this topic floating around Facebook, a couple of different blogs, this, that, and the other. People are always, why do this? Why do this? Boomer, you're the young guy in the room. Why do this, man? Why do we do this?
The fame and the money, obviously, are the two biggest reasons. I'm a bit of an outlier. I had parents that were in EMS. I saw it young. I liked it. I thought it was a good way to help people early. You know, everybody when they're young wants to be a doctor, and then you actually start to go through school and realize you're not going to touch a patient for 10, 12 years, depending on when you start your schooling. And I thought that it would be an excellent way to provide really important health care faster.
Yeah, Marty and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you saw the episode, and we were talking about people who were legacies kind of in EMS. We're talking about how you and your dad, you just sort of kind of followed his footsteps and how you've been kind of working. Just tell everybody where you work and kind of some of the stuff that you do, man.
Sure, and just to be clear, I do it better than my father. He was version 1, I'm version 2, so just to clarify that straight away.
We got to make sure he watches that.
Right, now we know we'll see it. I started in upstate New York, a town called Clifton Park, New York, where I got my EMT education in upstate New York and my paramedic education there as well. I worked for the town ambulance at Clifton Park Half Moon Emergency Corps, where I really kind of went through all my levels. I started as an ambulance attendant way back when we actually called providers ambulance attendants. Did that, went through sort of like a mentor ride-along program, became an EMT, and then eventually moved up to paramedic with them as well. Alongside Clifton Park Ambulance, I worked for a commercial service in the neighboring city called Mohawk Ambulance Service. I was an EMT and a paramedic there for the better part of 5 years. John, right about the time that you and I started to know one another was when I went to Maine for undergrad. I went to the University of New England in Biddeford, Maine, and picked up EMS in Kennebunk, Maine, and Kennebunkport, Maine. And now I am and
I just wanted to ask you a question because you said you started out in New York, and from what probably most people know is that's not really a national registry state. How did that work for you transitioning from New York into Maine?
So New York to Maine was easy. Well, New York to Maine was less hard than it could have been, I'll say. The Bureau of EMS in New York, not being a registry state, was pretty well versed in good, thorough explanations of what a New York State paramedic was and how it met the criteria for many other states. So when you do all of your reciprocity paperwork back and forth, well, there was a whole pile of paperwork. New York State was very good at explaining just what exactly I'd been trained to do, what I do on a daily basis, what I can do, my protocols allow me to do, and the medications that I carry, procedures I can perform, and the like. And the state of Maine went through that, saw it all, and loved it. It certainly wasn't as easy as faxing them my national registry card, but it took a couple weeks longer and got it squared away.
So there wasn't any kind of like apprehension, any kind of, hey, maybe I don't really want to do this messing with Maine because of that then?
No, I mean there was definitely more drama than there needed to be. It's weird as a practicing paramedic when you have to explain to an office of EMS that you're familiar with those things called 12 leads. Like yes, I do them. Yes, I run them. And it was just because they just hadn't had a lot of pre-hospital providers out of New York, so there was a whole lot of confusion as to what our system was really capable of doing and what our state allowed us to perform. But no, not really. I mean, other than there being a little bit more paperwork and back and forth, it was never anything that really deterred me from going into Maine and obtaining my credentialing there.
So, being the legacy, being Boomhower 2.0,
Exactly.
was there ever a time that you thought you wanted to do something else?
I think I've always wanted pre-hospital emergency medicine in my core and in my foundation somewhere. I absolutely have considered and have gone to school to continue on with my medical career, but I've always really wanted it to stay based in EMS. I've definitely had periods of burnout, and as you and I have discussed, and Marty and I have discussed, there are times where you're like, I need a week off before I quit and never come back. But when I took some of that time off, you quickly realize that, as many of us can attest to, we find this to be a calling, and those of us who think we do well and provide good care really want to stay in it in whatever way, shape, or form they can.
So, Marty, you being quiet today. I know you mulling over the thought process. Marty's the money guy. He's got that money question. I can see the dollar bills in his eyes. The question about – I start asking the money questions. I know you want to, Marty. Go ahead, man.
I'm ready. Give it to me.
I don't know what money questions to ask.
The why we do this for, the pay we do it for,
Yeah, I don't get that. I would never do what you guys do. I think the idea of it sounds interesting, right? Hop on an ambulance or – fly in a helicopter, swoop down, save some lives, go do it again and again and again. But then I was watching a documentary about these guys in LA, ambulance guys in LA, and they would work with a lot of the homeless, and then they would just hit them, like you said the last time, spit on them. They get paid $15 an hour. It sucks. I would not want to do it.
And to clarify, that's good money for EMTs and paramedics in comparison to other states.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember when I first started out in EMS, and it was like, that was like the big money, like $13, $14 an hour. Like when you make $14 an hour, you were like somebody who'd been doing this for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And
can you buy a house as an EMS?
Do what now?
Can people buy houses and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, when I started as an EMT, with that commercial service in New York, I distinctly remember coming back to my town ambulance and saying, hey, I got the job and I'm making $10 an hour. And people spit out their coffee and were like, when did you become a paramedic supervisor? $10 an hour? Oh my God, that's what I made after 8 years in the field 15 years ago.
Yeah. So, and Marty don't know about some of this kind of stuff, so I'll ask some of these questions. But how many times in your career, and you're not married, correct? Don't have any kids, correct?
Nope.
Yeah. So it's just you.
It is.
So and it's a little different when you don't have a wife and kids and stuff, but at the same time, the financial stuff is there. Marty just asked, can you buy a house and stuff?
Sure.
How many times have you worked multiple jobs, like multiple services at the same time?
Oh, my career. I've never had a period in my career, even now that I'm at Boston MedFlight, which is a tremendous jump in salary from what I was making in New York. I still have other jobs. I still teach. I still work part-time on ambulances on the side. I've never not been with just one ambulance company. And I don't really know of any paramedics that are. Because like Marty was alluding to, you can't make it work. It's an easy trap to fall into, and I think, John, you can agree with me there. When you get used to the flow and you get used to the scheduling, it's really easy to look at your holes in your schedule as time you could put in elsewhere, and then it's just a cycle that sticks. and you just have to keep doing it because that's what you know, and that's what brings in a real livable wage.
Yeah, I've mentioned my kids on the show a couple of times, and my wife, she started out her career in EMS. She's now into nursing, nurse management, so it's a little easier for us. I don't have to work the 2 or 3 jobs, but the reason I said I mentioned my kids, Marty and I were talking, I don't know, one day this last week, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and when we were kind of talking about this, about looking at, kind of doing this show, and I was telling him the story about how the oldest child, when she was really little, you were talking about filling holes and stuff like it, just working multiple jobs and working so many days. One day she picked up the phone and called 911, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" She's like a little kid. She's like, "But I want to talk to Daddy." And it's like, that kind of makes you go, but at the same time, it's like, wow. And that's kind of, while, that's my personal story, that's a lot of people's personal story about missing time with their family and their kids, and it really is sad that we have to do this so much. I know you guys probably see all the stuff that's been going around about hey, let's raise minimum wage, and then people in EMS are fussing about it. Marty starts smiling over there, hey, I need $15, make burgers and fries, but and then the EMS people are like, well, I'm making $9 and saving lives, so what's the equation?
Right. I mean, I can absolutely see, I can attest to that on being the legacy on the other side of the coin. There was a whole lot of time where Dad would either show up in the fly car if he could, or wasn't there, couldn't be there, had to work, stuck late on a call. As the child way back when, I can absolutely attest to what your daughter was going through, and that's part of the reason why I pick up the overtime and stuff that I do now. I hope that if I relieve the John Newtons of the world, or the dads and moms of the Christmas and the New Year's and this and that, then hopefully when I have a couple of Rugrats someday, then some other 20-something who thinks he's the best man in the world will do it for me.
So being a kid, having a parent that did that, I'll go back and ask you the same question again. You
Sure.
knew what the lifestyle was like. You knew what the money was going to be like. What
was wrong with me?
Okay, yeah. What's wrong with you, man?
Yeah.
What were you thinking? I mean, seriously. What would make you want to do that? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, and to be clear, I was really young when my dad was a paramedic, so we weren't, talking salary back and forth. And if I remember right, he fell over, when I told him what I was making as a starting EMT too, because that was probably what he left with, many years back.
Yeah.
I did it because I wanted to help people, and I hate to sound so cliche, but I really that was my thing. I loved it. I've always been fascinated with emergency medicine and medicine as a whole, and finding a niche that I could perform in and perform in well. I continued my education to obtain other degrees and to continue to move forward was good for me. Like you said, being single, well, I can definitely attest to a couple ex-girlfriends that left because of EMS and the schedule and the chaos.
Yeah.
Once you get into the schedule, it's easy, 12 hours here, 24 hours there. I worked 36 hours. I worked shifts that were 36 hours long for the last 2 years before I came to Boston MedFlight, and that was just my norm. It was James worked from Friday to Saturday night, and then he was free from that one job for the rest of the week. And if he picked up an overtime shift, great. If he worked at the firehouse, great. But he just kind of did that. It was just the norm that we all learned to make work.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And, it's funny you said that about, making those personal connections. And Marty, we had talked about that, I think, in the last episode when we were talking with Clint about that, about how hard it is to make those connections. And I think, my wife and I were able to survive all those years of us both just sort of kind of doing the high five and passing off the kids and stuff like that at the exit on, in between work or whatever on the side of the road, and it's just like, because she understood, she knew what the lifestyle was like because she worked in healthcare, she was in EMS and stuff. And I think it's hard for people outside of EMS. And I know Marty keeps saying that too. I don't understand why you guys do it for pay, but I don't know, Marty, what do you think about the hours we keep, man?
I think they're like being an entrepreneur, so I don't have a problem with the hours just because if you want to do something you really like, you got to put in the hours no matter what. If it's 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, I think the kids are going to be hurt, but I'm more concerned about the pay because I know there's a lot more people that make money off you guys, but then you guys don't get paid. And then, like, do you guys band together? Like, how do you not get paid? I don't understand that.
We don't either. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Marty. I don't know. What do you think, James? I mean, how do we change from bottom up? How do we change it from the bottom to make the uppers see what we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate. Regardless of how small my paychecks has ever been, it's never bounced anywhere I've ever worked. So at least,
me
it's
either.
been in my account. We know when we talk to people that have been doing this for a while that wasn't always the case. And smaller commercial squads that were failing or struggling to stay together, it was don't cash your paycheck until Saturday, please. I think a lot of it comes from. Now, when I say organized, I'm not implying union, I'm not implying anything like that, but good, structured, organized discussion with management. You know, everybody's got that Dr. House, everybody's got that rogue medic who has no problem whatsoever kicking down the boss's door and airing his grievances, airing his complaints, talking to management, what have you. But after a while, that's just noise. You know, and even if you're one of those who will only kick down the boss's door when there's a legitimate problem and you're lucky enough to be listened to, it's just one guy. And I think what a lot of agencies have to do is really band together, be it unionized, non-unionized, through management, above management, around management, what have you, and bring those complaints to the table as a unit rather than as one person or as a couple people arguing about what needs to change. And it doesn't help that we do the job for what we make. You know, none of us have it in us to not show up to work. You know, which is a benefit of our personality.
That's what I think the problem is. It's just like teachers. So I don't value the teaching profession. I know that's I just don't think they're worth anything these days. I honestly don't.
Wow, you just pissed a bunch of people off, but that's okay.
Well, they can change my mind.
Emails can be sent to Marty D.
Yeah. But it's like, I think my cousin is a paramedic in St. Augustine, but from what I understood, and I got a buddy who's a firefighter in Bradenton, down in Florida, but it seems to me that there's so many people that want these jobs that they could suppress the wages so that no matter what, if they get rid of you, they can just pick up somebody else. I know, at least in firefighting, I know that is true. But
that's
I don't know.
I think that's true throughout the civil service spectrum. I know when I made the jump from New York and Maine to Boston to start my career with MedFlight, my position was filled in a couple weeks. It wasn't, we need a paramedic the caliber of James Boomhower, as devilishly handsome and as quick-witted. It was, we need a paramedic. Do you have a paramedic card? Do you meet our minimum qualifications? Fantastic. And not saying that those paramedics aren't great guys, but it's that simple. I
mean, it really is. I mean, you know, and these days are gone. But I will say this, I can remember early on in my career, 10 or 15 years ago, showing up at a service. Now, it's one of those things that I knew the guys that worked at the service. People knew who I was. And you know how it is with when you work multiple services within maybe a call area or everybody's adjacent in a couple different cities and stuff. I mean, they knew who I was and stuff. But I showed up to apply for a job. I was like, hey, are you guys hiring? And he was like, yeah, what are you doing the rest of this afternoon?
Here are your keys, yeah.
I mean, seriously, he was like, let me make a copy of your license stuff. You got your license on you? And I was like, yeah. He goes, you got your ACLS and stuff like that? I was like, yeah. He goes, here's a shirt. Be on that truck over there. We'll get you some keys to the narcotics, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later this afternoon when you get done.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things. Now, those days don't exist anymore. And some people, when they see that and they hear that and hear stories about it, they're like, holy crap, that was shady and stuff. But at the same time, there's always been a shortage. The shortage is just different now.
Right.
And you got people willing to do it for free.
Do what?
You got people willing to do it for free.
Oh, the volunteers who do it? Yeah. And a lot of times the volunteers do it because the ambulance services can't afford to put ambulances out in every little 5 miles of, in a county. So these guys are like the stopgap. These are the guys that are there, and they can kind of provide some level of care until the ambulance can get there, whether it's 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes away.
So what's the goal? Like, okay, I'm starting out, I want to be an EMT, right?
Yeah.
Then in 20 years, let's say I'm ambitious. In 20 years, what do I get to be?
I think a lot of that depends on the service that you're with. You know, if you're with XYZ ambulance service, then you could probably work up the ranks to supervisor and paramedic supervisor and field training officer and continue on from there. If you're with a fire-based service, then you have, I don't want to say legitimate, but more solidified promotion potential. In a couple of years, you can take your lieutenant's exam, captain, and continue on from there. I think that's very much...
Fire service is more structured. Yeah,
So it's like
fire service is more structured.
Yeah, absolutely. But 15, 20 years ago, I don't think it was you're either a paramedic or you are a paramedic supervisor. I think that was about it. Unless you made the jump to management, which back then, and in many services is still true today, was not, you know, your managers weren't in the ambulance with you every Tuesday. They were in a separate building, in a separate place, doing totally separate stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of the people, and that's the thing too, and we were talking about it, 5 or 10 minutes ago, the whole thing about pay and stuff. These guys were on the truck. They were making the $8, $10, $12 an hour and were fussing about it. They became managers, supervisors, operation managers, field training officers, whatever. And it's like they forgot that last week they were making $10 an hour because now this week they're making $18 an hour or $20 an hour. And it's like, dude, so I don't know. And it does a lot of it center around money. It really does.
Do girls go after the guy in the uniform, or is that just firefighters?
You're the young single guy, man.
To be clear, I'm in a relationship before you get me in a whole lot of trouble.
Just don't let her watch this episode.
Right. Yeah, she just doesn't know that I'm here right now. It's totally fine. Yeah, I think to a point. I think that always kind of raises an eyebrow, but the personality behind it matters way more than the uniform.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know really the answer to that because over the years, I will say that, and I really do have a face for radio. I probably shouldn't be doing YouTube videos. I probably should just stick to podcasting. It's terrible making folks look at me every week. But I don't know. It's been hit and miss for me over the years, and sometimes it's uniform, and sometimes, I don't know. I think it's like you said, it's your personality, how you interact. And then some people, I guess, maybe just feel sorry for me. I don't know.
It's just pity, John. It's
just pity.
It's a discussion for we could do a whole other podcast on it. But
waiting for the short straw, man.
Right. I think with the uniform thing, this is always a tangent that I've had. You'll sit in any emergency room anywhere, and you'll see two people from the same agency, same level of certification. One guy comes in with clean boots. I'm not saying they have to be spit shine, but boots that are clean, shirt tucked in. Clearly he laundered his uniform. He or she laundered their uniform at some point this week. And then the dude pulling the stretcher behind him is about 60 pounds too heavy for the shirt he's in. It's spilling out. It's got coffee stain on it. It's clearly not from this call. It's from 6 years ago. So I always laugh when people are like, oh, do they dig the uniform? I'm like, I think they dig that it's laundered. Like, I think at this point they're like, oh, nice, he ran it through the wash. He must be a keeper. As opposed to some of these people who throw in whatever they had lying on the bedroom floor and then go to work the next day.
Pulled out from under the back of the seat or something like
that. Yeah. I leave a spare shirt in the back of the ambulance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, I don't know, Marty. What do you think, man? Are you sold on why we do this? It's a calling in life.
I understand the calling part of it, in a way. I think, how many years do people usually stay in that industry? Is it like 2 years, 3 years, 10 years?
I've been doing it for 22 years, so I don't know. How long you been doing it, Boomer?
I've been a paramedic for 11. I was in it for a couple years before that. I'm almost probably at 15 years total.
Yeah. I will say, a lot of the people that I went, almost every single person that I went to paramedic school with or was in EMT school with, I would say 90% of them are still paramedics. Guys that I was a firefighter with in the Marine Corps, when they got out, they're still firefighters, and some of them have gone to EMT school and are now.
Do you still like it, or do you just go so long that you just can't do anything else, so you're stuck?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, the answer to that is yes, because And, Boomer said that, that burnout. I'm going to tell you, I have been on fire before. The freaking supervisors go, look, dude, this is your 30th day in a row being at the service. Go home. And I'm like, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll go home, doggone it. I'm just like, and it's just like, but you do get in these ruts, and there are days that you like it better than others. And I think most of us that do stay longer are the ones that can either learn how to cope with it, or they really do and truly like it. The difference that we feel like, whether we feel like we're making a difference every time, it's that one patient. You might go 6 months and you're like beating your head on the wall in the back of the truck and crying and going, please don't make me have to run another call. But it's there's that one freaking patient that that you made a difference in their life, and you're like, oh, wow. And you're ready to go again for another 6 months. And it's just like that one little thing. And it's not always the pay would be great. Better pay would be great. Maybe not having to work some of the crazy hours, not getting beat up, kicked, spit. Saw a guy got stabbed this last week. A couple of guys got stabbed this last week in the EMS news. And I think, yes, you do there's a point. I mean, I'm 41. At this point, trying to change my career, and even though I do have a degree in something outside of EMS, I don't know how realistic it would be for me to get outside of EMS, and I don't know why. While I might want to, I have a desire to, I think it would be hard to transition. I really do, because it's a different mentality. I don't know. What do you think, Boomer?
Yeah, I have to agree with most of that. I mean, I think there are a lot of things that are universal through a bunch of different professions. I mean, anybody who goes out in the street to help people has been punched, kicked, spit at, medics, firefighters, EMTs, nurses, because I very much consider the emergency room that front line. People drive up in pickup trucks, honk twice, and pull dead bodies out of their truck and drive away all the time. But I think that there's...
What did you say?
there are people that just drive up and say, hey, my buddy's been shot, and drive away all the time. There are all sorts of people who wander into the emergency room with no good intentions and an injury that needs to be bandaged that never saw the cops or the EMTs or the paramedics or the firefighters. I think, too, that, like John said, I think it's a big jump. I think, too, that in order to stay in this profession, and we're not talking about people who want a year of EMS under their belt before they go to PA school, or somebody who wants to be a doctor and is just kind of doing the thing for a little while. You can't find this anywhere else. Where else in the world am I as a paramedic going to be able to land with a helicopter, because I'm certainly not flying the thing, land in a helicopter, run into somebody's ambulance, fix the patient with a scope of practice light years ahead of anything I've had before, get in that helicopter and drive away? Nowhere.
Yeah.
So it might be easier for me to make a couple tweaks in my career to expand my salary, but there's no guarantee that I'll work with the acuity of patients that I like to work with. There's no guarantee that I'll have the scope of practice. And when you talk about those golden handcuffs of, all those pieces kind of falling together, add on top of that, as John said, a whole bunch of seniority that gives you more pay than the guys that are coming in. It's real hard to make that leap and then decide what sacrifices you want to make. Remember, I worked really, really hard to go from just regular old field EMS to critical care transport, which is a huge jump. There really isn't another jump from critical care transport to blah. So the question in a couple of years is, where do I go? What do I want to do? Or am I on this podcast 5 years from now talking about the promotion I just got? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I hope we're here in 5 years.
Right, absolutely. It's a whole lot of good karma coming your way.
I hope you don't have to wait 5 years for a promotion, but I mean, I think, that's probably a topic for a different episode, the whole progression through EMS, and, how do you set those goals to, I want to, like Marty started out saying, okay, where do I see myself in 20 years? But I mean, okay, so I'm an EMT now. In 5 years, I want to be a paramedic. In 10 years, I want to be a field training officer. In 15 years, I want to be a field supervisor, and, I want to be operations manager. I want to be the guy running the whole, service or whatever, however it's structured. And yeah, I think, sometimes we do have to kind of jump around and do this, that, and the other. And it's hard.
Yeah, and I think too that there's a group of clinicians coming in now that want that tomorrow. I don't talk to very many EMTs that want to go to paramedic school in 5 years. I talk to EMTs that want to go to paramedic school tomorrow because they want to RSI tomorrow. They want to do all this stuff tomorrow, and then they either
and the scope of practice is a lot better now, so it's a lot more fun to do this and to make it easier for people to stay in. I mean, you think about 10, 15 years ago, I mean, when you said RSI, that was like, woo, nobody RSI'd, and now it's like everybody RSIs, everybody does CPAP, everybody does, and it's just like, okay, what's the next new thing? So, yeah, scope of practice, I think, is another thing that you kind of have to be a little bit of a medicine junkie. I wouldn't even say trauma junkie. I would just say a medicine junkie as a general to want to stay. And that's what most people so, well, this has been a lot of fun, and I think we could probably keep talking about this for a while, but we've been going for a little while, and I don't know. Anything else there, Boomer, from you? Any ideas or anything about this topic?
No, I mean, I think we all kind of hit the key points. A lot of people find this a calling. A lot of people do it because they weren't really sure what it is, and then they get the bug really quick once they get in the ambulance. And I think that a lot of that is going to supersede a lot of the other stuff, like the wages, the hours, things like that.
Oh, yeah. Got any more questions just popping around the old nugget there, Marty?
No.
No?
I must say that I have a lot of respect for what you guys do. I didn't know, a year ago, if you would ask me, what do you guys do? As you mentioned before, you guys sit in a firehouse and do nothing all day.
Right, wash our cars.
Yeah, and then respond to my apartment building's fire alarm at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's meaningless.
Right.
But to come to understand what you guys do, I have a lot of respect. It's kind of disappointing that you guys don't get paid to reflect what you guys do, especially more than teachers, and that's another story. But, yeah.
So my middle sister, and I don't know if she watches this stuff or not, is a teacher. So I'm sure I'll hear about that if she's watching it.
That's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation.
I have one last question. So, you know how we go to those trade shows every once in a while, and we'll be going to the one in Baltimore. What do you guys sit around trying to innovate products or different types of? I know both of you guys know two entrepreneurs from the educational side.
Sure.
But, when you're sitting on the downtime, you're like, how can we do this better? How can we make money on this? Let's come up with this idea. And then does that ever happen? And just the idea gets thrown away, or what?
I think a lot of people have made a lot of things in medicine that way. This widget doesn't connect to this widget, or I wish that I could figure out a better way to intubate. I mean, John, look at the BAM adapter. Think of how simple a device that is.
Yeah.
A BAM adapter, in essence, Marty, is a little piece of rubber that whistles when you put a tube in somebody's nose and you get really close to their trachea. And that went from a little widget that some dude made to standard operating equipment on ambulances before the days of CPAP in a really short period of time. So I think less than how can I make millions off of this are a bunch of really smart guys figuring out, whenever we do X, we always need to take some of this and some of that and put these two things together. Could we make something, or could we figure out some way to make that more efficient and more practical? Probably before we get to them, can I make millions?
It's interesting you say that. I don't know so much about just like at trade shows. I think we all kind of sit around and talk about it and think about these things. And I should be ashamed of myself as a historian not knowing this and being an EMS educator. I don't really know the backstory on the elastic gum bougie. Excellent device.
Sure.
But my best educated guess would be this. This would be a paramedic who did the one thing that we're told not to do. They took the stylet and they pushed it about this far past the end of the ET tube.
Right.
And was like, hey, this works. Can't we make something better?
Yeah, the first 17 guys got wicked tracheal tears, but that 18th guy, they were like, maybe we're onto something with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, you're right. It probably was not the best medicine. But I think, it had to start from something like that. Just... Sure. I mean, medicine is a practice, and sometimes we do stuff that we probably shouldn't in the interest of innovation, but most of the time it leads to good stuff like the gum bougie and 10 other different objects, like you said, the BAM and whatever else is out there.
Sure.
So, I don't know.
Oh, and I just want to say this before it ends. I'm talking about teachers, like people in high school, not educators, for what you guys do.
If you listen real close, you can hear him go beep, beep, beep. He has to walk away from those angry emails.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we might actually get some heated emails this week there, Marty D.
Oh, but that is true. I do have a lot of respect for the educators in EMS. But outside of that, no, I do not.
Yeah. Well, some of it's the same, but a lot of it's not. And I, as an educator who, I'm not going to talk bad about students, but I think we all have those one or two students you just want to just sort of, the little bunny foo-foo, you just want to pick them up and say, right? But
Oh, never.
Never. You have never had any one of those students. All your students are really good students, right, Jay?
Oh, they're great. I just hit mute and walk away. It's perfect.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, guys, it's been fun, but that's all the time we have this week. Marty
Perfect.
D.
Let me say one more thing before I wrap up. I love my dad very much. The guy that I was busting on hard. He's a good person.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
I love you, Dad.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Boomer, for being here this week. As always, Marty, fun having you as my co-host. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Share, like us on Facebook, Twitter. Find us on all that social media that's out there. You can also find us on mediclifetv.com to get the latest updates and information. Hey, if you want to be that well-informed lifer, go to that contacts page, fill out and sign up on that lifers list. Guys, this has been Medic Life, episode 22. My name is John here in Augusta, Georgia. Marty D in Houston there, and I don't know, somewhere in the northeast corridor is the old Boomer. Guys, thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.
Take care, guys.